Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman 78 The Metal Curtain issue 6 by Robert Venditti and Gavin Guidry. Superman's final battle with Metallo is here as the villain kicks Superman all around Moscow, caring very little for the people he constantly claims he is protecting and the champion of. Like the last couple of issues of this series, I have had a real problem with the pace of the issues. The previous two were nothing issues. Nothing really happened or stuff happened that we as readers actually already knew and should have already been established in the book, but were just regurgitated again, and it felt like the book was kind of running around in circles. Here it's kind of the complete opposite, where everything is just rushed through just to get to the end of the story. That's not to say the stuff in this issue isn't great. It is. It's Superman being Superman and inspiring others to stand up to bullies and even defeating the villain with his own words, not his fists. But this is all things that need to be peppered throughout the book, and it's not something you could just jump to and say, look, we did a Superman thing. There, the end. We could have had this really great back and forth between Metallo and Superman regarding their ideologies over the 6 issues, but it's all been backloaded into the back of this book, and it's almost like this book was meant to be a little longer than it is, and then it was cut down, and then because of that the entire story got super truncated, and it's how we ended up with issues with barely anything happening in it, then issues like this that just rush through it all, and then as well plot lines that just go nowhere like Lois's, which I will be getting to a little later on in this review. Superman's fight with Metallo ends when the people of Moscow realize that Superman isn't some evil invader like the government have been calling him, and they help convince Metallo not to kill him. Again, this could have been a cool story peppered throughout the book, with Metallo starting to maybe doubt the government in what they are saying about America and Superman, especially after visiting America in the 3rd issue. And maybe he starts having doubts about his handler Morozov and like where his allegiances lie, and starts thinking like maybe this isn't all bad and maybe Superman can coexist with them. But it's not done at all, and it's all just shoved into this issue, and it's really frustrating because he just turns on the Soviets like that in the span of a page, and it goes completely against what we've seen of the character through these 6 issues, where he's a total Soviet hardliner. He's a total believer in the Soviet dream, and he keeps saying that throughout the book, but then he just turns on them straight away. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it definitely feels like there was more there and it just got cut or just didn't get to the writing stage or the scripting stage or something. But it definitely feels like there is more there that we never will get to see. It's really frustrating since I know Venditti is capable of writing really well constructed stories. He did it for years on Green Lantern, and he's even written Superman stories that are well constructed. The first volume of Superman 78 was really well done, and this is just the complete opposite. And again, I guarantee you this book was meant to be longer than it is, and the story was meant to be bigger and have more moving parts in it than it ended up having. With the big fight over, Metallo turns on his own government, but to ensure Morozov can't make another Metallo, he flies into space and overloads the suit, killing himself but destroying the suit and the last bit of kryptonite in the process. Perry and the Daily Planet crew, meanwhile, are literally left twiddling their thumbs as they have bugger all to do in this issue and story in general, and don't even know what to write about thanks to Russia not revealing what happened between Superman and Metallo. This was probably the worst casualty of this story, as Venditti really primed Lois right out of the gate in that first issue to get in on this big story with her investigating the stolen armor, but it literally went nowhere. She kept referring to a source, and I don't even think we actually even found out who that source was. It was implied to be Lex Luthor, but again, I don't even think it was meant to be Lex Luthor. I think it was meant to be someone else. But that story got cut, so that person also got cut. Like, we could have had this really great story of her, sneaking into Russia with Jimmy and, investigating this Metallo project and, having to evade the KGB before Superman has to save them while he's fighting Metallo. That would have been a real Donnerverse Lois Lane type thing to do. Her getting into all sorts of trouble and Superman having to come by and help her get out of trouble in some way. Instead, she spends most of these issues just kind of sitting around doing nothing, which is the most un-Lois thing you could possibly do. On top of that, we also introduced her father a couple of issues ago, and yet there's nothing bringing him back at all in this book. He is completely gone from this book, and of course there was the whole thing where if the US goes to Russia, it'll cause a war and everything, but again, that could have been an opening for Lois to go to her father and try and convince him to give up a pilot. Maybe the pilot we saw a couple of issues ago, who was definitely Hal Jordan, to fly them to Russia or something. You know, something just to connect these stories a little bit more, but it just never happened, and I guarantee you it was meant to happen. One thing that has been absolutely consistent and amazing throughout the book though has been Gavin Guidry's artwork. Gavin draws a fantastic Superman and really captures his character extremely well through all of his paintings of the character. There's a great one-panel page of Superman just standing there all heroic, telling Metallo that he believes in him. It's just great. It looks fantastic. His action is really quite cool and has a great weight to it, and I love how he's always using scenes where like Superman or Metallo will get punched and you'll see like the reaction shot of them just like flying halfway across a country or something. It's just a big scale to it all, and it was great. He's also one of the very few artists who have actually gone to use pretty much all of Superman's powers in one single issue, which is really quite cool. The finale to the second volume of Superman 78 was a real truncated mess, as its plot just barrels through so much story that would have benefited from being fleshed out over the course of the several issues that actually didn't have much plot in them. The book clearly suffered editorial issues, so I'm not going to blame Vendetti or anyone like that for it, and it's a real shame we never got a more fleshed out, cohesive story involving Superman battling Metallo and the Russians in a late 70s, early 80s Donnerverse. There could have been some really great magical stuff happened here, but it just kind of fell apart as the book progressed. That being said, the artwork is fantastic, and characters like Superman were completely on point in their characterization, so I applaud Vendetti for doing that, as well as Gavin Guidry and his amazing artwork. I'm going to give this issue a 4 out of 10.